Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast where people leaders share their side of the story. We talk about the challenges they're facing, how they're addressing them, and what changes they hope to see as the workplace evolves. This podcast is sponsored by All Voices, the all-in-one employee relations platform. Hello, and welcome to this episode of HR Voices. I'm here with Todd Mayhew. He's the CHRO of Snap Finance. And Todd, thank you so much for coming today. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. You've had an array of talented guests. I'm happy to be counted among them.
I'm excited because I actually just took over hosting the podcast from Emily, who's really kind of set us up for success. So I told her, I was like, you had a lot of really great early guests and you really set a lot of the stage. So now I just get to jump in when it's a little bit, more figured out, and we can just make sure that we keep rolling with the momentum. So I think we're in a good spot to kind of keep some good stuff going here.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I love to kind of open up with learning a little bit more about you, your organization, the people that you support. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So you mentioned I'm the CHRO at Snap Finance. Been in the role for a grand total of 5 months. We are started about a decade ago as a fintech. Our founder discovered that there was a big market need for financing solutions for really consumers under distress. So he figured out that, there are people who just don't have access to financing, but really need financing for urgent things like tires, right? If you are depending on your vehicle for your employment and your livelihood, and you need tires and you can't in that moment afford it, there are very limited solutions for you. So he created this fintech to fill that space, and did so very successfully using machine learning and other kind of risk modeling and insights to fill this market very successfully. So anyway, I got approached about 5 months ago to join because the company is at a really neat inflection point. While we had kind of first mover advantage, the marketplace is getting sort of crowded with other new entrants and competitors, and now we're looking at how do we harvest this great business model that we've created and create even more opportunities to help consumers who might be under some financial duress, right? Give them more options, more things that we can provide to them to give them financial success and security. So it's been a lot of fun in 5 months. I've learned a ton, and I'm so glad I joined this organization.
That's so cool. And, it's a weird time to join because I don't know anybody who's in any financial distress right now. So I don't really know what you all are doing or how you're getting
Right.
business. But
Right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Right. It's an unfortunate reality that there are a lot of consumers out there who really need
yeah.
what we offer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The work is really, really needed. And I think that's why I was so excited to chat with you too. Because, in sort of the role that you have within Snap, you're supporting all of the people that allow those products to be built and allow people to access it. So can you talk to us a little bit about your, employees, sort of what kinds of challenges are they facing in sort of an environment that I imagine is really busy? Like what sort of the work landscape look like for them now?
Yeah. So obviously we have, we're a fintech, so we have a big technology organization. We have a big sales organization, right? That, spreads out across the US. We have a big, talented pool of employees in Costa Rica. We have a business in the UK. We have a few employees in Germany. But fundamentally, the groups that we support are all on this journey together. And that is, how do we take this great platform we've built and turn it into a true platform, kind of a surround sound of consumer financial products that can help distress customers. So that's the big challenge for all of us, from technology to our sales forces to our different market segments. How do we move from being kind of a transaction-based company, right? So where someone goes into a merchant, they're under distress, they need some help, to having a more continuous relationship with that consumer to help them in multiple phases of their journey. So that's the broad strategic challenge that we're all kind of trying to figure out. Of course, we have resource constraints and priority changes and stuff, and so I jumped right in and was tasked by my CEO to sort of help restructure the organization to make us sort of more centers of excellence focused, so that we can leverage our resources more efficiently, to try to help with this transformation. So for me and my team, it's been really about org design, org effectiveness, roles and responsibilities, kind of RACIs and so forth. That's been a very exciting part of my first 5 months.
That's cool. I love a good racy. To me, it's the map of how anything can happen. I'm a nerd for
Yeah.
racy charts.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, it's old school, but it works, right? It's been around for a long time, and it's dispassionate. Like, let's just sort of agree on who does what, who owns what, right? And
Yeah.
it's a good jump off point for like building process and building the connective tissue for new org design. So Yeah.
Yeah. And it brings clarity because I think there's, not every single thing that you're trying to do within the company has to take so much of your brain. Sometimes if you can have some things just sort of simple, like
Yeah.
a chart that kind of shows you who makes what decision, it allows you to then kind of use your brain for the bigger level, higher level things, which
Yeah.
I mean, we have to mention it, right? With the rise of AI,
Yeah.
theoretically, the higher level work that we're doing is the stuff that's more interpersonal so that, that's kind of where a lot of the nuances of HR and the nuances of how we're working is really kind of going in
Yeah.
that direction too.
I agree. Rebecca, the one thing I would just is agree with your statement, and AI will certainly allow us to kind of unlock kind of new levels of capability. In my experience, though, and I'm embarrassed to say it's almost 25 years, right? But what organizations often overlook in any kind of strategic reorg. So, they're good at defining, hey, here's the new market we want to go after. Here's the new strategy. Here's what we're not going to do. All right, let's organize around that. And usually they're pretty good at moving boxes and org charts, but they often overlook the connective tissue, right? It's always,
Hmm.
oh no, we don't know who's responsible, so no one's accountable, and so it's being really conscious of, all right, yes, we can move the boxes in the org chart and have change reporting relationships, but let's really make sure we consider how work's actually going to get done and who is going to do what, when, and in my experience is that organizations generally are very bad at it. And I'm saying, I'm fortunate that we are spending the necessary calories, I think, to get that right with our new org model. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's such a really good call out. It's like, I forget exactly what the statistic is, to be honest, but I know that there were statistics about how many company initiatives actually fail because of poor change management. And it's
yeah,
when it's the reinforcement part that just sort of drops. It's everyone makes a plan, they make their announcements, they say this is it. And then they
yep,
don't do the constant, the reps, the constant follow up. They're not sort of constantly bringing people back down to the why the change happened and kind of using that as the center to drive the behavior change that you're looking for.
yeah,
And that's the
totally agree.
hard part is the people part.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, people, cultures reinforce the people part, and culture is just behavior reinforced by leaders and systems over time, right? And so you're right. If you don't pay attention to those components, you're likely to fail. I always go back to when I do org redesign. It's been, a model that's been around for decades, but it's the Galbraith Star. I'm not sure if you're
Mm.
familiar with that, but
I
it,
know of it, but I'm not that familiar
yeah.
with it, to be honest.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it starts with defining your strategy, right? And then, kind of what's your structure? What processes do you need? What are rewards are you going to institute to kind of reinforce the behaviors? And then the people, right? And do you have the right, kind of people? And so that's a really elegant and simple model that's, withstood the test of time to help guide organizations, and something that I've used, throughout my career, and I'm using it still now, right? To make sure if you forget any of those pieces, you're likely going to run into trouble, right? And to
yeah.
your point, the people component is one critical component of the star.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And so I think something that I want to kind of ask you about is sort of how your path to HR, because it sounds like you're good at sort of the people, the people side of thing, obviously, and, the connective tissue and the learning. And you have a doctorate in education. So how does that help you in your HR role? How did you get to HR from that path? Or are they even sort of connected, or how did that happen, I guess?
Yeah, no, a good question. This is a long story, probably longer than we have time to, but I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version. So, did an undergrad. I'm Canadian by background, born and raised in Canada. I did an undergrad in political science, loved it. Did a master's degree in public administration, was destined to become a Canadian government federal public servant. Born and raised in Ottawa, so like government town. And I
Hmm.
realized I didn't want to sort of commit to that path. And so when I was doing that master's of public administration degree, I met a lot of people doing an HR master's degree. It was called a Master's of Industrial Relations, and they were all getting fantastic jobs in big private sector organizations. So I thought, what, I'm going to stick around for an additional year, get that master's degree as well, and that really launched my career in HR. The doctorate came along later in life. I did that and graduated in 2020, right before COVID blew up.
Mm.
But I did that because when I rolled the tape back, when I finished my second master's degree, I wanted to do my PhD, was accepted to the University of Toronto, but it was dirt poor and couldn't afford it at the time. But it was something I always knew I wanted to go back and just finish. I felt like I could do it, wanted to do it. And I'll tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed the program I did at USC. It's a doctorate in organizational change and leadership. And it was just a phenomenal experience, fantastic, faculty and classmates. Can't say enough good things about it.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
And how do you think that influences your leadership style? Especially, I know you're 5 months into your role, so I'm sure you're still kind of learning the people, learning the things.
Yeah.
It takes time to really kind of get to the nitty gritty of who people are and how they operate, especially when you're meeting them in a period of change. So how does, what you learned in that area kind of make your leadership style unique?
Yeah, I mean, look, in the program that I completed, we were exposed to multiple models of leadership and organizational change. The thing you have to worry about is not coming across as like a ivory tower sort of egghead, right?
Yeah.
And you have to, in any organization, you have to, when you join, you have to show value, right? And kind of small wins initially. So I'm always very mindful of that, of not, just sort of coming across as the ivory tower person who can't really execute. But I tell you, the degree was super helpful in terms of giving me like language about why we should do certain things, right? Like it's no mistake that it's just a reality that organizations are often led by CFOs, people with their CPA, finance people,
Yeah.
engineers, who don't often think from a people lens, not because they're bad. It's just not what their sort of their backgrounds, their disciplines. What I found with the doctorate, it's given me that much more language and analytic capability to meet them at their level, right, and respond
Right.
with facts, data, not just theory and kind of ethereal stuff, but hey, like here are the empirical studies and sort of kind of being able to give them facts, data, research to support any kind of suggestions I might make. So yeah, it's maybe I
Yeah.
think I love the program and maybe I think a better HR executive.
Yeah. That's great because that's kind of the thing that can sometimes be really hard in HR is you work so much with finance and finance is important, right? Businesses exist to make money. We understand
Yeah.
that. That's obviously clear. The same way, you have a business that you have consumers as your main customer, you know, it's easy if you kind of break down your business into a spreadsheet or a mathematical equation, but the hard part is getting people to find you and then helping people to trust that you're the right solution. And all of that is in the psychology of all the different parts of what make people people. And it's the part that I could probably nerd out about for a really long time, but we don't have time for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
I would, yeah, yeah. I would just like build on your point. I say, I've heard this said before, and I repeat it. A business strategy without a people strategy is a pipe dream, and
mhm,
and often, you get leaders who build a really elegant business strategy where the numbers make sense, and the market seems to be there, and all the right things, but then they don't think it all the way through, and that's
mhm,
I think the task of every HR leader is to sit down and say, all right, okay, this all sounds good now the people like what are we going to do,
yeah.
or should we even do this because we've got massive human capital constraints, right? We just don't have that expertise or that capability. So that is a key role for an HR leader to bring that lens to the table and shape strategy, because sometimes that what might look good on paper, if you can't put the human capital back it up, again, it's a pipe dream. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's the thing that I've always kind of seen in that, I float around in a lot of HR communities and in my previous role, we did a lot with our clients who were working on employees who were accessing coaching and all these other things. And the hardest part that we always had to try to solve for was in getting people to change behavior. So getting people to, part of the battle might have been accessing data, whether it was performance data, recruiting data, business data, whatever that is. But I think that there's a little bit more that is sort of solving the data access problem now, just because actually, thanks to AI, it does make sort of reporting and things like that more accessible. But the hard part is now still, I think, in driving behavior change and getting people to do things, either differently, sometimes change their attachment to the way things were done before to embrace it now. So do you see that challenge in what you're doing now too? Or do you have other even bigger challenges and bigger fish to fry that you're facing right now?
Lots of challenges, but I'll pick up the one that sort of teed up around AI and adoption and change management. I've obviously listened to a number of your podcasts, and virtually every one of your speakers delves into AI. So I feel I must as
You
well.
have to.
I would describe it this way. I mean, AI is a lot like exercise, especially as you think about New Year's resolution, right? It's everyone's talking about it. Not too many people are actually doing it, and even fewer
Mm,
people are doing it well, right? So,
I like that.
yeah, I think we are again, as a fintech, I've appreciated how cutting edge Snap Finance is trying to be with AI. And we have, an enterprise license for ChatGPT and other solutions as well. And it's required me to level up as an HR leader in AI because my prior organization was a little bit more conservative, happy to kind of lag the industry. And so, I've made a point of attending, CHRO sessions with leaders and, hearing what they're grappling with. And my own personal journey was fascinating. I heard this one CHRO talk about, he was in a resource constrained environment. He needed L&D help, and he decided to treat, Chat GPT like his director of learning development. So he said, I every week I would spend time with it, I would coach it, I would give it feedback, I would give it more data, more input, course correct. And over time, I had a robot as my head of learning and development, and it was out of necessity. And he said that led him to realize that that AI is actually not a technology tool; it's really more of an HR tool. And if you think about the things that people have to do with AI around onboarding it, training it, coaching it, developing it, performance managing it, sometimes offboarding it and terminating it, right? Those
Yeah.
are HR skills. Those aren't IT skills, right? So that was really revealing for me. And I've, since used AI myself as a kind of a virtual kind of analyst to help me with some deliverables that my CEO has asked for. So I've needed to, if I want to lead from the front with my executive colleagues, I need to walk the talk and learn it and use it, and so that's been part of the behavior change. I needed to start from within and model it, and then get my leadership team bought in, and now we have an initiative in 2026 to not only train but to really highlight where we're showing kind of meaningful adoption and how it's driving efficiency.
Yes.
And we're all working on the same stuff.
Yeah.
And there's such a wealth of information circulating on how best to do it.
Yeah. I love the learning out loud part. I think that's the part that's just initiatives will fail if you're coming in and telling your employees, this is how you use these tools and this is exactly what they're great for. And here are pros and cons. I think people can see right through that, right? Because the technology's only been around so long. It changes so often that if you knew what you were doing 6 months ago, unless you've kept up to speed with it, your knowledge is out of date anyway. And
Right.
the learning out loud part, I think, it's in my experience is a good way to build trust in between your employees too, because then they see, okay, Todd's figuring it out as he goes. It gives me the confidence to figure it out as I go. And then your conversations with employees can be more about here's what we're learning, here's what we're doing, here's what it's showing, and not this is how we're mastering this. Because if you consider yourself a master, then you're immediately becoming, there's it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? It's like you
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
know a lot, and then you're in the valley of what is it? I always
Um,
call it the Valley of Ashes, but that's Great Gatsby. I
I'm
digress.
not quite. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'm tracking with you. I'm tracking with you.
Yeah, Valley of Despair. That's what it is. When you realize it's like you don't know as much as you thought you did, and then you're like, oh my
Yes.
God, I'm an imposter.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Where, I'd say that one thing too that's been wonderful for me is I've gotten to know employees throughout the organization. Some of them are what they're doing is just so incredible, right? And it's, when you see how they're using it, and it just triggers ideas, right? So
Yeah.
that's a big focus for us and in our internal communications is sort of really highlighting like, here's how Rebecca has figured out a way to kind of save time in her day, and look at and actually video like and share these really powerful stories.
Yeah. And it builds more trust in the technology. I think everyone talks about the fear of hallucinations in AI and all this. And I'm like, I don't know. I've been dealing with technology that's been hallucinating for years. We've all been complaining about autocorrect, right? How many times
Right.
do you type
Yeah.
something and, your phone just makes up a completely different word that you weren't using? Everybody knows what a typo is. Everybody knows that sometimes autocorrect decides you're going to use the wrong there. And you don't,
Yeah.
people can use context clues and the human discernment to understand what that text means. I think AI hallucinations right now are basically the equivalent of a typo. Yes, it
Yeah.
might take a little bit more skill to kind of understand and vet the context and everything, but when it becomes something that you can just embrace as a natural part of using the technology, I think that it makes it a little bit less scary. And now it's the part where people just have to kind of be a little bit more, I guess, comfortable with that side of knowing that it might not work out the way you think it would.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. I would say that I have found personally that AI augments your capabilities, but if you don't have those baseline capabilities, AI won't help you. Like it can't compensate. Like if you don't know the right questions to ask, or you don't have enough whatever like financial acumen or analytic acumen to test whether or not you're getting AI hallucinations, then it's dangerous, right? So
Yeah.
I would just sort of say to our HR colleagues, if you think AI is going to supplement a lack of capability around like analytic acumen, for instance, or financial acumen, it won't, right? It'll help you improve what you already have, but it's not going to compensate for, big skill gaps. And, as a community, in my career, HR people tend not to be the most analytically oriented. Although that's sweeping generalization. You'll find really talented analytic people, but generally speaking, it's not the skill set that you find. And so I just sort of continue to say, if you're going to look to AI to kind of help, kind of correct that deficit in skills, and you're like, it won't, So that's just my observation
Yeah.
so far. Yeah.
I agree. It's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. If
Yes.
if you're just amplifying, if you're growing a poisonous plant, the plant's still poisonous, right? It might be robust, but it's not going to be great for you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for, for joining. I think there's a lot of really good sort of tidbits kind of coming out of this conversation that people can use too. Do you have any closing thoughts or any parting words you want to share before we go?
No, other than, you know what? It's we're in turbulent times. It's a wonderful. I've spent the vast, vast, vast majority of my career in HR. I had the opportunity to leave the function for a few years. I came back because I missed it so much. It's a wonderful time to be in HR and an HR leader. There's just such an array of interesting, challenging, transformational things happening in society, happening in organizations, and I just love the diversity of things we get to do in any given day. And so, hopefully, if people are listening to this and they're looking for inspiration, I would say you've chosen the right career path, because to me, there's nothing better in industry than HR.
Yes, I cannot not endorse that enough. Thank you so much.
You
Well,
bet.
thank you, Todd. Thank everybody for listening, and catch us next time with our next episode of HR Voices. Bye.
Thank you very much.